Imagine the worst cramp you have ever had. That sudden, vicious knot in your calf that seizes you in the middle of the night and makes you scream into the darkness. The muscle turns to stone. The pain is blinding, primitive, a reminder that your body can betray you without warning. 10 seconds pass, maybe 20, and then mercifully it releases. The muscle softens. The pain fades. You lie back down, shaken but intact. Now imagine it doesn't release. Not in 10 seconds. Not in a minute. Not in an hour. The muscle stays locked, hard as rock, pulling on your bones without rest. The pain is not a wave that passes. It is a sentence. A constant, screaming agony that never, ever stops. Your muscle contracts and contracts and contracts, burning through every reserve of energy, crushing its own blood vessels, suffocating itself from the inside. And you are completely conscious for all of it, trapped inside a body that has become a prison of flesh. This is not an exaggeration. There are real medical conditions where muscles enter a state of perpetual contraction, where the chemical signals that tell a muscle to relax are destroyed, blocked, or simply never arrive. And the science of what happens when a cramp never stops is as fascinating as it is terrifying. Today, we are going to explore what would happen if your body decided to never, ever release the pedal of the spasm. According to science. Welcome to What If Science. First, let's understand what a normal cramp is. A cramp is a rebellion. Your muscles are constantly receiving orders from your brain, a delicate electrochemical ballet that plays out thousands of times per second without you ever noticing. For a muscle to contract, a motor neuron releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. This chemical messenger crosses the synaptic cleft and binds to receptors on the muscle fiber, opening ion channels that allow sodium to rush in. The muscle fiber depolarizes. Calcium is released from internal stores. The proteins actin and myosin slide past each other, and the muscle shortens. This is contraction. But every contraction must have an ending. For the muscle to relax, another signal must arrive. This time, inhibitory neurotransmitters, primarily GABA and glycin, bind to their receptors on the motor neuron and tell it to stop firing. The ion channels close. Calcium is pumped back into its storage chambers. The muscle fiber returns to its resting state. It is a perfect, beautiful balance between excitation and inhibition, between go and stop, between tension and release. A cramp happens when the go signal goes insane. The motor neuron becomes hyperexcitable and fires without permission, at brutal speeds of up to 150 impulses per second. Normally, this is caused by an electrolyte imbalance, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium falling out of their proper ratios, dehydration, muscle fatigue, or a compressed nerve from a bad posture. The muscle shortens violently and cannot relax because the inhibitory signal cannot break through the noise. But eventually, the body restores order. The alarm is silenced. The cramp yields. But what if it never yields? What if the inhibitory signals are destroyed forever? This is exactly what happens with tetanus toxin. Not the disease, but the mechanism. The bacterium Clostridium tetani enters through a deep wound, a puncture, a rusty nail, a splinter. It releases a neurotoxin called tetanospasmin. This toxin travels up the peripheral nerves, climbing at a rate of about 250 millimeters per day, until it reaches the spinal cord. And there, it commits a precise, devastating act of sabotage. It cleaves synaptobrevin, a protein essential for the release of GABA and glycin. Without these neurotransmitters, the inhibitory brake is gone. The motor neurons become a television channel with no volume control. Any stimulus, a flicker of light, a sudden noise, a gentle touch, triggers a massive, simultaneous discharge of every motor neuron in the body. The result is tetanus. Every muscle in the body contracts at once and does not let go. The jaw locks so tightly you could not pry it open with a crowbar. The back arches with a force capable of fracturing the spine, a posture so extreme it has its own name, opisthotonos. The chest is frozen in a forced exhalation. The victim is fully conscious, aware, and trapped inside a statue of flesh that is crushing them from within. The pain is beyond description. Without treatment, death comes by asphyxiation or cardiac exhaustion. The cramp does not stop. It simply kills you. But tetanus is not the only villain in this story. There is a rare condition called Isaac's syndrome, or neuromyotonia. Here, the immune system, for reasons we do not fully understand, produces antibodies that attack the potassium channels in the terminal nerves. Potassium channels are the off switches. They are responsible for repolarizing the neuron after it fires, resetting it so it can fire again when needed. Without these channels, the neuron cannot turn off. It fires, and fires, and fires again. The impulses cycle endlessly, generating continuous, undulating muscle contractions that look like worms crawling beneath the skin. This is called myochemia, and it is relentless. Patients with Isaac's syndrome live in a state of perpetual movement. Their muscles never rest. They cannot sleep because sleep requires muscular relaxation. They cannot find comfort because stillness is impossible. Their bodies are engines stuck at full throttle, burning fuel without going anywhere. Over time, the constant activity causes severe fatigue, muscle wasting, and a psychological torment that is hard to overstate. Imagine being exhausted beyond words, desperate for rest, and your own body refusing to let you have it. And then there is malignant hyperthermia, a hidden genetic nightmare. Some people are born with a mutation in the ryanodine receptor, a protein that controls the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum inside muscle cells. They may never know they have it, until one day they are exposed to certain general anesthetics, like halothane or succinylcholine. And in that moment, the ryanodine receptor loses its mind. It opens and cannot close. Calcium floods the cytoplasm in a tidal wave. The muscle contracts massively and cannot relax, because the calcium pumps cannot keep up with the release. This generates brutal heat. The core body temperature can spike to 44 degrees Celsius, 111 degrees Fahrenheit, in minutes. The muscles literally cook inside the body. They break down in a process called rhabdomyolysis, releasing potassium and myoglobin into the bloodstream. The potassium stops the heart. The myoglobin clogs the kidneys. The heart, which is also a muscle, begins to beat erratically, then fibrillates, then stops. A single, uncontrolled cramp, triggered by a routine anesthetic, can fry you alive from the inside in under an hour. Now let's take this to the most extreme hypothetical scenario. What would happen if, suddenly, every muscle in your body decided to lock into a permanent, unbreakable contraction? First, the pain would be unimaginable. Nociceptors, the pain receptors embedded in your muscles, would fire at maximum intensity, flooding your brain with signals of catastrophic tissue damage. But pain, strangely, would not be the worst part. The worst part would be the mechanics. Muscles consume ATP, the energy currency of the cell, at an extraordinary rate. In a perpetual cramp, your ATP reserves would be exhausted within minutes. Without ATP, the calcium pumps in the muscle cell membrane and the sarcoplasmic reticulum fail. Calcium remains in the cytoplasm, binding to troponin and keeping the actin-myosin cross-bridges locked. The muscle cannot relax even at the biochemical level. It is an irreversible lock. The muscle enters a state similar to rigor mortis, but in life. This is called a contracture, and it is a sign of irreversible cell death. As the muscle fibers suffocate, they break apart. Their cellular contents spill into the bloodstream. Potassium, normally kept at high concentrations inside cells, floods the extracellular space, causing a catastrophic condition called hyperkalemia. The heart, exquisitely sensitive to potassium levels, begins to malfunction. The electrical rhythm of the cardiac muscle is disrupted. Ventricular fibrillation sets in. The heart quivers uselessly instead of pumping. Within minutes, there is no blood pressure, no oxygen to the brain, no life. Meanwhile, myoglobin, the oxygen-carrying protein from muscle, is released in enormous quantities. It is a large molecule, and the kidneys, now starved of blood flow, struggle to filter it. Myoglobin precipitates in the kidney tubules, forming solid plugs that destroy the nephrons. Acute renal failure sets in within hours. The body poisons itself with its own remains. If the cramp affects the diaphragm, the end is faster. The diaphragm is the primary muscle of breathing. If it locks in a contracted state, as happens in tetanus, you are trapped in a forced exhalation. You cannot inhale. Your lungs are empty, and there is no way to refill them. Oxygen saturation drops precipitously. You lose consciousness in 3 minutes. Death by asphyxia in 5. If the diaphragm locks in an inhaled state, you are trapped with full lungs, unable to exhale. Carbon dioxide accumulates in your blood, dropping the pH to lethal levels. Acute respiratory acidosis ensues. The heart, starved of oxygen and poisoned by acid, stops. But here is the deeper truth that this nightmare reveals. Your muscles are not machines of brute force. They are an electrochemical dance of exquisite precision. Every contraction you have ever made, from the blink of an eye to the beat of a heart, from the breath in your lungs to the steps of a marathon, depends on a microscopic balance that can be shattered. A single ion channel that fails, a single neurotransmitter that is blocked, and the symphony becomes a sustained scream. The body is a universe of tiny machines, and each one must turn on and turn off in perfect synchrony. We live our entire lives unaware of the trillions of successful operations that happen inside us every second. But when the machinery breaks, when the stop signal never arrives, we are reminded that we are fragile, electrochemical ghosts living inside a skeleton wrapped in meat. And the meat can betray us at any moment. So the next time a cramp wakes you in the darkness, do not curse it too harshly. It lasted 10 seconds, and then it let you go. It could have stayed forever. If this journey to the limit of your muscles made you appreciate the silence of your own body, subscribe and hit the bell. At What If Science, we explore the boundaries of the possible, with science as our only compass. What would happen if your reflexes were 10 times faster? Or if you could not feel pain at all? I'll read you in the comments.